Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are breaking down one of the most misunderstood tools in tech, Microsoft Copilot. And if you think you got it all figured out, you're probably going to want to stick around because the reality is way more interesting than the marketing hype. So, you've heard the name, you've seen the logo everywhere, and you're probably thinking, okay, it's just Microsoft's version of ChatGPT, right? I mean, that's a totally fair assumption. But what if that common belief is completely and fundamentally wrong? Okay, let's just dive right into this quote. Because, look, the source material for this explainer makes it really clear. If you view Copilot as just one single thing, you have already missed the entire point of what Microsoft is building. This isn't a product, it's a platform strategy. Yeah, you can forget all the friendly, helpful marketing you've seen. The source frames this as a really aggressive two-pronged strategy. It's designed to become a permanent, unavoidable layer in your daily workflow, whether you're writing code or just trying to clear your inbox. A permanent, expensive tax? I know, that sounds pretty harsh, right? But the core idea here is that Microsoft is essentially inserting an automated middleman between you and your work, and that fundamentally changes the economics of how we get things done. So here's what you absolutely have to understand. Copilot isn't one tool. It's really just a brand name that covers two very different beasts, built for two completely different worlds. And this table, I think, just lays it all out perfectly. On one side, you've got GitHub Copilot, which is basically a pair programmer for software developers. And on the other, you have Microsoft 365 Copilot, which is more like an automated executive assistant for the entire enterprise. They do not do the same job at all. So for developers, the value is just crystal clear. It's deeply woven into their coding environments, it automates all that boring boilerplate code, it can summarize complex changes for the rest of the team, and it can even write the first draft of your tests. It's all about raw speed and efficiency. But, it's not a magic wand. If your existing code is a total mess, Copilot suggestions are gonna be a mess too. It's that classic garbage in, garbage out problem. Plus, there's a real risk it can introduce subtle security flaws from its training data, which means, yeah, a human still absolutely needs to review the work. Okay, now let's flip over to the office worker because this is where things get really interesting. Its real power comes from something called graph grounding. What that means is it connects directly to your private company data, all your emails, your chats, your documents, to give you relevant, contextual answers that a public chatbot could never, ever know. But, and this is a huge but, here's the catch. If your company's shared drive is a complete disaster of old, outdated, and contradictory files, Copilot will just serve you that disaster with a big, confident smile. You always, always have to be the final fact checker. So you might be wondering, how does Microsoft even pull this off? How does it securely tap into all your private company info without, leaking it to the rest of the world? Well, it's not magic, but it is a pretty clever engineering process that's designed to keep your data locked down. The absolute key to this whole thing is something called the Microsoft Graph. The best way to think of it is like the central nervous system for your entire organization's data. It knows who you talked to yesterday, what documents you worked on last week, and which meetings you have coming up tomorrow. It uses a process called retrieval augmented generation. Yeah, it's a mouthful, so people just call it RAG. Here's how it works in simple terms. When you ask a question, the system doesn't just guess the answer. First, it goes and retrieves the most relevant information from your files. Then, it hands only those files to the AI and says, okay, based only on this stuff I just gave you, answer the user's question. This is the secret to getting relevant answers without ever training the AI on your private data. And that right there brings us to a really crucial point about how you should even use this thing. Asking for vague, creative stuff like create a beautiful chart, well, that's kind of a gimmick. It might look cool, but the real power, the game-changing tool, is using it for super specific, complex tasks, like generating a complicated Excel formula that would have taken you 10 minutes to look up. All right, so all of that tech stuff brings us to the real story here, because it's not actually about the features, it's about the price tag, and what that price tag signals about the future of work. $30 per user per month. Microsoft is making a massive calculated bet here. They believe companies are going to be willing to pay $360 a year for every single employee just to save them maybe 15 minutes a day summarizing emails and catching up on meetings. That's the entire value proposition. And this quote really gets to the heart of it. The source argues that Copilot is aimed directly at automating the grunt work of the professional class. If the bulk of your job is finding information, summarizing it, and organizing it, what you might call information triage, well, you're now directly competing with a $30 a month bot that does exactly that. But this isn't just about cutting costs. The source describes it as creating severe skill friction. And in simple terms, what that means is that the baseline expectation for everyone is going up. The bar for what's considered competent and productive in an office just got permanently higher. So you can see the new skill divide starting to form, right? In the past, a lot of your value came from doing the manual work. In the future, your value is going to come from your ability to precisely and clearly articulate what you need the AI to do for you. Your job is, in a way, becoming a prompt engineer. So, after going through all that, what's the big takeaway? What are you supposed to do with all this information? Well, according to the source, the real choice isn't if your company adopts AI. That ship has sailed. The real choice is whether you're going to use the tools that are already deeply integrated with all of your company's existing data. And for millions and millions of people, that tool is going to be Copilot. And that leaves us with one final, kind of provocative question. As these tools start to give you back hours and hours in your week, the next challenge becomes entirely human. What are you going to do with all that extra time?